Okay.
So I'll start sharing my screen.
Oh yeah, let's let you get set up, and thanks to everybody who can join us. We know schedules can be tough and Wednesdays can be hard, and we are recording this, so we will share it out with everyone again later. And I will let Talesh just introduce himself and what he's going to speak to us about, and go ahead and get started.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Hi, everyone. Good morning, depending on where you are from. So my name is Talesh Permare, and I am the head of marketing and data science at a technology services company called Ectaflow. And we are based out of Chicago. We have been for 4 years in the business, and we do a lot of work in the technology side of things. We help organizations with their hardware, software, web design work, and some data science and analytics. But that's not something we're going to get into. We are going to get right into our topic for today. And I want to start with a question. How do you make strategic decisions for your organization? um, you know and most often people will say, hey, there's always some sort of experience and human element involved in it, whereas some people like to use data to take those decisions. But you'll see that the higher number of decisions, or the higher, most of the decisions are made using your gut or your human intuition. And that is absolutely fine, because most of the successful nonprofits that I've worked with, um, they make their strategic decisions using their experience and intuition. So, there are two things that can happen. Either you get really, really lucky, and people will praise you, and you'll be like, you'll be wowed for it, or you could be really, really wrong. And the problem starts when you're really, really wrong, because you will either end up losing a lot of money, or you would probably lose a lot of credibility in front of your members. And that is not a space that you want to be in. So, how do you find the right balance of risk and reward when you're taking your decision? The answer lies in an area called marketing science, which is nothing but a combination of using your creative marketing techniques and really highly sophisticated data science and analytics, and kind of combining the two to take strategic decisions. Um, so today, in today's session, we're going to look into how this particular area can potentially be used to maximize your fundraising outputs. So, but before we dive into that, let me give you a little bit of background about myself. You might be wondering, why is this really corporate guy, uh, in the mix of our FCA community, and trying to get involved and engaged in this space. And it starts 8.5 years ago. When I was 17, I started my very first fundraiser. In the city of Mumbai, I started a sports events company, and we used to raise funds for a foundation called Akanksha, which used to take care of education for young children who belong to the below poverty line families. And since then, in 2013, I took part in Enactus, which is a global nonprofit for entrepreneurial action. So what they do is they help you set up businesses, a proper sustainable business for people that belong to a certain section of the society, so that they can have a sustainable source of income and live a decent lives. And my life changed after that project, because since then, I have the fortune to be part of many different nonprofits, and help them out in my spare time with some of the skills that I learned in school, or at the workplace. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm here to share a few things that I've learned over the years, and hopefully the things that, the few things that I share today, help you at least take the step in a direction of being more strategic with the decisions you take in your organization. So that's the topic. So let me start off by asking a question, and you can put this down in the chat box. Just simple yes and no should be fine. Do you recognize this list? And it's absolutely cool. When I saw this for the first time, I didn't know it as well. Okay, can I see the chat? Oh, okay, cool. Cool, absolutely, no worries. So this list comes from CFRE, which is the Certified Fundraising Executive. It's a global nonprofit for nonprofits that teaches fundraising strategies to fundraising professionals. And that list comes from a certain section in their certified examination. We don't have to worry about that. But what I'm really concerned about these three things from that giant list of things. And I can say with 90% surety that you guys, or most of you guys, would be doing points 1 and point 2 really, really well. And what do I mean by that? You guys have proper goals, or most likely you guys have goals, I assume so. You guys have certain budget that you have dedicated to your marketing efforts, and you do a great job at communicating with people in your community, with public relations, communication, and growing your fundraising programs. And by all means, that is amazing. That is definitely an important step in the entire mix of things. But it's point number 3 that often somewhere gets neglected and is very underrated. Every time you do a communication campaign out there, it is really important to measure the performance of those campaigns, because that's how you'll be able to gather intelligence on how do you fuel future campaigns. And that is something that we are going to really, really look into today. So here's the agenda. We are going to look into one important metric for measuring future campaigns, and that metric is donor lifetime value. Then we are going to look into using and applying donor lifetime value to simple things like segmenting your donor base. And then maybe we'll look into an email campaign and see how we can design an A/B test to measure that campaign. And throughout this list, I will exchange examples. I will give you some few calculation techniques and a few exhibits that you can use right away without any sort of external help. And at the end, also, I will help you, understand how you can apply this to your own organization. All right. So the most important starting point before we dive into our metric, that is donor lifetime value, it is important to understand why you need that metric. Why do you need all of these things? Why do you need those techniques? It is because that every time you have a certain strategic decision to make, you will be taking that decision with a certain goal in mind. And in order to measure the success for that goal, you will need certain indicators, certain metrics to measure the performance and to understand whether you have hit that goal or not. So what you will really understand and learn is that donor lifetime value is a very important metric that can be used as a performance indicator for 90% of the things you do out there. This is like a universal, metric that really helps and fuels most of your strategic decisions. This is why I love this metric so much, because it just gives you so much information just by calculating one simple number, and you can do tons of things with it. So let's understand what this particular term really means. Um, think of it as a way to understand and predict the potential value of a certain donor that he brings to your organization, that is based on his historical engagement with your organization. And this historical engagement is often based on things like what is his average donation? How many times has he given to your organization? How many years he's involved with your organization. So based on few things like this, you can actually put a number on what the future contribution you can expect from this person. So why do you want to measure it? Think of it as a way for you to look into the future and see how much you can expect from an individual. And based on that information, you can budget and invest today, right? And that is something that is very useful, because if you can put numbers like this, you will be able to understand how much money you really need to put in towards a certain person, and accordingly decide what your business model viability is. Now, this is a very businessy jargon term. We don't have to get into the nitty-gritty stuff of what business model viability is, but I want to explain that with a very simple example. Say I am a donor for your organization, right? And I've donated my lifetime value to your organization is $50, and you spent a cost of $20 to acquire me, and that cost of $20 is usually things like cost for email marketing, cost for running your fraternity. You find that number by averaging it out for everyone. So once you get that number, that cost number, and you have my lifetime value, you can subtract and understand whether you're profitable or not. And if if my donor value is less than the cost that you incur, you'll be at a loss. So just using this simple addition subtraction, you'll be able to understand whether you are spending too much money, or you are earning enough money. And as a non-profit, even though we are non-profits, for us to remain profitable is extremely important, because it is in those profits where you will be able to find those funds to invest in your campaigns, invest in engaging with individuals, invest in the welfare and the benefit of your members. So by streamlining these two figures, you can actually redirect funds to those individuals that really are important for your organization as a whole. And we will look into how those things make sense. And yeah, this is the reverse of what we talked earlier. If your cost is more than what you're earning, it's going to be a loss. And this is just a graphic. But yeah, so this number is a little tricky and difficult to calculate, because the hardest part is pulling in data from all different sources. And you need data like, data from accounting, where you have every member's transaction listed down years on years, and that has to be tracked, cleaned, and then you have to put in formulas on top of that. So I've thought about this a lot. And before we dive into that a little bit, I want to give you an example on why you need to understand, why you need donor lifetime value. So look at this. Look at this fact. Um, the lifetime value of a Starbucks customer is $14,099. That means every time you walk into a Starbucks, if you think about this figure, this is the amount that you're going to spend throughout the years or over the years that you are buying a Starbucks coffee every morning. So for Starbucks to spend $1,000 to get you is no big deal, because you'll be spending so much, like 14 times more than what they invested you. So understanding these two figures for your own organization will help you really know how much of revenue a certain donor is bringing, what kinds of people are bringing the most revenue, and then you can study those people, understand where they are from, what kind of work they do, what kind of careers they have. And that's how you'll be able to better engage with those members, because you have that information available. Yes, and this is why it is a very important metric, because it gives you an understanding of the reward that you will get by keeping a donor engaged for years. Think about it this way. If I have donated $500, but I've donated just for 2 to 3 years, whereas say Ashley has donated $500 for 10 years with in an organization like ABC, for example. um, the lifetime value for me would be higher, because I would potentially give more over the next 7 years that I have been a part, that I potentially will be a part of ABC. So that's how you'll be able to compare the value of donor one and donor two based on their donor lifetime value. And then it gives you an importance of understanding that, hey, we need to keep Talish in the system for 10 years or 20 years, because he is going to bring me that extra bit of revenue. So yeah, to calculate DLV, you need these three things. We are not going to get into the technicalities of these three things. It is something that you will figure out really easily once you get into your transaction history. But I don't want you to worry so much about this. But what I want I want to make your job really, really easy. So I've put together this free calculator that you can just, click on this link and access it, make a copy of it, and, use it anytime with your own data and information. Here are just some instructions on how you can copy it. But I just want to give you this example. So this calculator will help you calculate the overall donor lifetime value of all of your members. So this is like a really easy and simple way to just understand whether you are spending too much or you are spending just enough to be profitable for the next 4 to 5 years with your organization, or you need to tweak your strategy a little bit. And this is really, really simple. So you just have to input your total donation values, and then just input number of donations, and the calculator will do the job for you. And here is just a blank template of the same. So you just put in the figures here. They take cues from this example, and you will have your donor lifetime value there. And once you have that figure, once you have this figure, donor lifetime value in purple, what you need to do, the next step that you can do is calculate the cost that you've spent for 5 years, spread it across the number of people that have donated every year, and then just subtract the two, and you will get your profit or loss, or that figure. It will just help you understand what your position is in terms of fundraising. Because often because often this figure of profit and loss just goes away because you see revenue coming in, but you also need to keep a check on the expenses that you incur while you're getting that revenue. So yes, please let me know if there are any questions, and feel free to stop me at a certain point and ask questions. I'm not really tracking the questions here, but I can understand that this information can be a little overwhelming at times. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions, or we can or else we can definitely look at them at the end of the session. Oh yeah, I can definitely drop this link. Okay, you got it. Okay, super. Yes, I will share that link. Okay. Yeah, and this is the formula for your reference in case you want to if you have that data in Excel sheet and you don't want to find those values, you can always feel free to use this formula, and you can do this in Excel and also get your answers. But so that we looked at one way of calculating donor lifetime value for the entire data set, but you can take this one step further by calculating donor lifetime value for each member or each person in your data. Now, this approach is slightly more tricky because you need to look into a certain figure like churn rate and repeat rate and things like that. And I don't want to make that really, really technical. And this is slightly more advanced because you'll probably not be able to do this on Excel. You'll probably need some knowledge of a programming language to do this. But churn rate is nothing but the rate at which donors drop off from your system. So, every year, so say, in the average churn rate for the nonprofit industry as a whole is 55%, which means that if you get 100 donors in 2021, you can expect 55% or 55 donors dropping off and not donating in 2000 and 2022. So that's just what that figure means. So that might be different for organization to organization, depending on your historical data, and that needs a little bit of extra calculation to arrive to that exact number for your own organization. So I don't want to put that huge burden of calculation on you. So I'm going to skip that part. But we are going to see how we can use that information and take cues from that and make some decisions. So what I've done here is I've created a fictitious data set, or rather a simulated data set of how your organization's information should look like in an Excel sheet. It should have all sorts of contact information. It should have information about what is each member's net worth, what kind of giving they are most inclined to give, whether they have bequested their assets to the organization or not, what are their income levels like, etc. So these are just, this is like a sample way of looking at your data. But what I'm most interested in showing you guys is this column. That is the donor lifetime value column for each and every member. Now, here's where things will get really, really interesting. So you have every member's total donation here, that is their giving level. Some people call it giving level. Number of donations, number of years that person has donated, and average donation value. Once you have these 4 columns, very straightforward to calculate this column. But I want you to look at this observation real quick. So this is just, I've created this giving level segments. This is nothing but based on people that have donated a certain amount. I've just created some buckets. So I've created these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buckets. Yeah, 5 buckets, depending on how much they've given. But I want you to look at people people that have donated above 5,000. And here's where things will be really, really interesting, because often you will see that people who have donated really, really high amounts to your organization, their trends would disobey normal laws. So what do I mean by that? Now I want you to look at this individual and this individual. Both of them have donated $5,000, but one person has donated 5,000 in 5 transactions, and the other person has donated 5,000 in 40 transactions. Um, the number of years they have donated is pretty much the same, but if you look at their donor lifetime value, one person's donor lifetime value is $15,000, while the other person's donor lifetime value is only $2,000. Now, this has happened because there are outliers in every data set. There will be some individuals, most often these guys would be like the 1%ers, who will disobey your normal statistic laws. So, every time you are taking a decision on targeting people that belong to a certain segment, you want to keep this normal error rate at the back of your mind and try and find these people who are clear outliers and remove them from the system before you take your statistical decisions. So this is why I really wanted to highlight these two individuals. And you'll find many more cases as well. You'll find some people who have donated 5,000, who have donated just 2 transactions, but their predicted value would be like 40K. So, it is really important to also keep and this is where your human intuition and experience comes into picture. Assuming that every member has a certain gift officer assigned, the gift officer would know a lot more about these individuals than, say a data analyst would know. So when you bring both of these two brains in the same room, and then when they're working together, you will be in a much better position to take a strategic decision. All right. Yes. So that was one way to segment individuals based on their giving level. And it opens up doors for a lot of interesting information. Now, I want to show you the real comparison between those two sets of individuals. So we are going to look at people who have donated under $100, and then we are going to look at people who have donated more than $5, and we are going to compare them in terms of their donor lifetime value. So let's look at that. Okay, so now I want you to see this piece segmented by giving levels. You'll see this first group above $5,000. You'll see that there are around 1,500 individuals that fall under this bucket, and the people who fall below the $100 category are almost twice as much, which is kind of expected. A lot more people tend to give small amounts, so pretty understandable. But look at the value that they have given to the organization. That difference is massive. And this is a clear indication of that famous Pareto's law, the 80-20 rule, which means that 20% of the people contribute 80% of the value. So that's the clear representation of that particular concept here. But this is where I want you to look at this one thing. Look at these individuals' average donor lifetime value. One group has a DLV of $50,000, whereas the second group has a DLV of just $527. Now, if your cost to acquire these donors is equal, and most often it will be the same for every member because you will spread that out across all your members. So say hypothetically, if that cost is $1,000, your return on investment for group one is $47,000, whereas you're making a loss of $472 if you target if you market the same way you're marketing at the moment to these folks that are below $100. Now and keep in mind, this number 472 is just for one person. Now, if you have to use this figure and calculate the total loss you're making on by targeting the same way you're, targeting everyone, just this group, you will see that is this. You will see you're making a loss of $1.5 million, which your bottom line will not show because you are making a overall profit. Yeah, this is just going to show point because it's a huge number, but you're making a profit which is shadowed by these folks, but you're potentially losing like $1.5 million by targeting this sets of individuals. And you will find this trend even with your own data set. These numbers will be small because this is just a fictitious data set, but you will find this trend and you will be able to identify those sets of people that you're making a loss on. And then it just gives you a clear understanding that, hey, this is not the way we are going to target these individuals. Let's find other cost-effective techniques to engage those people where you can reduce this cost and bring this down to below $200 or $300 such that you make a profit on this group as well. So your overall bottom line will also increase at the same time. And you will end up saving a lot more money by just changing your techniques a little bit. But you won't know that unless you have this figure in front of you. Okay, so that was a little bit, so yeah, the results will be very eye-opening and informative. That's amazing, no worries about it. Another interesting way you can segment your members is by looking at their location. So, I want you to look at this sheet. So, for example, these are just two cities that I picked, Chicago and New York, but there are, I think, a lot more cities. There are a lot more cities than that as well. Say if you want to understand, which city or members from which city are giving you more value, and you want to, create marketing campaigns specific for a certain geographic location, or say you're planning say a fundraising event in a certain city, and you want to understand how many people to target from that city, or what's the potential people that you can get from engaging individuals from that city. You can also use donor lifetime value for the same thing. So yes, one way to do that would be this way. I can't see that for some reason. Yeah, either way, you'll be able to see and compare, how many donors you have from the cities and all of those things as well. Yeah. Another interesting way to segment donors would be by gift officers. Now, this will give you, this is going to be a lot more interesting and intuitive because it can give you some in-depth understanding of how many members a certain gift officer, what is the revenue mix, what is the fundraising done by each gift officer, so that you can compare and understand what is the ultimate value. Because often, it could be that a certain gift officer has less number of individuals, and the amount of revenue that he's bringing would be, say, $10,000, versus gift officer B, who is bringing $20,000 in an area that has a lot more donors. So how do you compare those two particular, the performance of those two, gift officers? Because clearly, if you compare it this way, you'll see that gift officer A, because he's bringing less, does that undermine his efforts? Not really, because he's working with a smaller pool of people. So, by comparing donor lifetime value of these two groups of donors, and if they are pretty much around the same level, it just gives you a much more easier comparison that, okay, both those gift officers are bringing high valued individuals, so their performances are pretty much on par. So it just gives you a little bit way to look at things a little more differently. Okay, so now I want to show you guys the most important and the most important piece of information that I think you guys can use anytime, irrespective of the fact that you have donor lifetime value in place or not. And that is with regards to your email marketing. And I'm sure, I'm pretty confident that you guys send out emails every single week, month, often to tons and tons of people in an email list. And you might be measuring that as well using MailChimp or something like that. That is amazing, and that is how it should be. But most often, what we fail to do as marketers is understand that when we're sending out universal messages to every single person in a list, there could be a possibility of losing out on really high valued individuals if they are sent a wrong message, right? So it is very important that you segment your individuals and create individual email lists or email contents depending on the person that you're trying to reach out, depending on the objective of that email. Now, how do you make such decisions? How do you decide that a certain piece of content is going to work for a certain type of audience? Because you probably do not have that information, and no one really has that information right away. So one way to do that is to do something called as an A/B test. And A/B tests are really, really interesting because they will give you customized results that work for your own organization. And most often you will not find what works for your organization online, because your group of people, your group of members can be really, really different from the majority of individuals out there in the world. So it is very important that you customize your email strategy to its finest piece, so that you get maximum engagement out of your members. And one way to do that is A/B testing. So how do you, do A/B testing? So this is just a sample email, which is right here. I don't want you to worry about that email content. But what I want you to look into is this example, this small case study. Say you have, say you want to do an A/B test on testing a certain piece of information on two types of audiences. You can do an A/B test for that, or alternatively, you can test and email a single, two types of emails to one single audience. What you really need to keep in mind is when you're doing A/B tests, you need to change only one piece of information so that you get maximum consistent results while keeping everything else constant. Otherwise, it will be very hard for you to measure and understand if you change, if you send two types of emails to two types of audiences, it will be very hard for you to measure what exactly is causing that lift. So yeah, before we get into that, let's look at this. So this is how A/B testing should ideally work. This is just a little bit of theory for you. What you would do is take your audience, divide it into random non-overlapping groups, which means that there shouldn't be any person, one single person being in both those groups. Both those groups need to be mutually exclusive from each other. And that's how you will ensure that your test is conducted fairly and you have results that clearly speak for themselves. Okay, so here's the case study that I was talking about. So say your goal is to increase traffic to your website using an email marketing campaign. And you want to test what kind of a call to action button works in your email, whether it's a learn more now button or a donate now button. Hypothetically, your learn more button should give you more traffic on the website, but you don't really know that piece of information. So how do you decide that? So to decide that, you're going to do an A/B test, which is going to be run on a certain audience so that you can understand and measure the lift of people, or the traffic lift that happens based on those two different emails. So here's what you do. You fix your certain target. Say you decide that you're going to go and so say, for example, you decide that you're going to target this group of individuals, that is people who have donated more than 5,000 in terms of their lifetime value. And you take samples. You take sample of 50 individuals for both those sets. And for one sample, you send out the learn more button in their email body. And for the other sample, you send out donate now button for the second group. And then you let the email campaign run, and then you track and measure. And you can do this on MailChimp, and you can see how many people visited your website from using either those buttons. And MailChimp makes it very easy for you to go into insights and see the differences, right? And if you see a result like a 40% increase or a 40% lift in website viewership, that is a clear indication that the donate now button, for example, in this case, works. So you will find a clear way. So moving forward, when you decide to run an email campaign, you want to use this language in your donate now, or in your call to action buttons. And you could do this test for email content. You can do this test for subject lines. You can do this test from testing whose email or whose name goes in the email body. You can do this test for each and every variable in your email to ensure that after a few tries, you have the exact piece of information that works for a certain target audience in order to get maximum responses or maximum desired actions from that audience that you want. And you could also do this for fundraising campaigns as well, and then measure how many people donated from that email campaign and things like that before you launch that campaign on a large scale. So coming to the last pieces of information, when do you apply these concepts? I think it's really important to know when you are ready to put some of these analytical techniques in place, because having knowledge of these ideas is amazing, but knowing when to use them is the tricky part, because often you will find yourself in this loophole that you are rushing to meet a certain deadline. So you've not been able to have the time to measure, understand, study your audiences. So then you go into that deadline using your human intuition, and then you create a high risk, high reward situation for yourself. And that is the situation you want to avoid. So yeah, the right time to dive into analytics is I believe when you have three important things in place. And the first piece is when you have the right form of data. And this is by far the most important piece, because data inconsistencies can happen when you have, say, 20 to 30 chapters, or you have spread all around the country, and each chapter has its own way of maintaining member data. So how do you maintain the consistency across all of those chapters? That is difficult. It is time consuming, but it is an important interim step before you even start exploring and understanding and learning from that data. So, putting in strong infrastructure to study and have the right data, consistent, clean, is very, very important. And once you have that solved, you're ready to take decisions or get insights from that data. That is point number one. Point number two is the right time. And honestly, that right time is right now. The earlier you begin, the more time you'll have for research, and the earlier you'll be able to start using insights to draw future campaigns. So, start small, but start early. That is what my best advice would be from this session. And the right person is probably you. The reason I say this is, even if you're not analytical, um, most of you guys are brilliant marketers. You guys know what works for your members. You guys know how to talk to them, how to communicate. So you're already one step ahead. When you have analytics and data science, you know, um, ready for you, you'll be the best person to take, some really strategic decisions. So, for you to have a little bit of knowledge of how analytics works, can just, take your current amazing levels to a much higher level. So it's really important. So, you're the right person. So, always, be open to analytics as a use case for fundraising opportunities. And yeah, so I just wanted to put this one thing out there. This is a small ebook that I wrote. It's absolutely free. You can just click this link and download it. This is just something that I wrote as a passion project of mine a couple of weeks ago, I say. And this is just like a starting point to be introduced from for a few different metrics, and you can read and learn about them and just see if you can apply them in any way. Yeah, and start talking about data internally. I think that's the first step, especially when you are like a really large organization and you have many chapters. It is going to be really tricky for you to get everything in place. So once you start discussions about data internally, I think that will just give the entire team a little bit of curiosity about, hey, we need to look into our data and we need to study and understand about it. So that will just get things moving a little bit quick. And then ask questions, help others ask questions. I think that's very, very important. Ask me questions. I'm always there to help. And this is just something I do out of passion. I told Jim that, hey, we should join the FCA because I love working with nonprofits. It's something that I've been doing all my life, and I want to continue doing that. So we should definitely take a part of that. They were like, okay, go for it. And so I love talking to people. I love helping people. If I can give you a little bit of a gold nugget, I think my purpose of joining this organization has been served. So I'm always here. Feel free to ask me questions, and I'm happy to help you think. So that's pretty much about it. Here are my contact emails, and if there are any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or ask me right away right now.